So, hello everybody and welcome back to our latest edition of interviews. It's a series where we interview real people with real stories. And today we're here with Christine from Kenya, and we're very happy to have you here. Hello, Christine.
Hello, Linda.
How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah, we were hoping that this is going to be better weather where we can have a little picnic, but I think we'll manage. And I actually brought you something. It's a little surprise. It is from my favorite cafe, French cafe, and it is a chocolate bun. So maybe we can start having a little picnic. I don't know if you're into sweet stuff.
Yes,
yes, you are. Okay, then go ahead and enjoy your bun. Okay, then I guess
I start my diet tomorrow, so I have to be careful today.
So that was actually the first thing that I was wondering. What about food in your culture, in your country? Is it very different from what we eat here? I mean, you know, you see the French baguette. I actually have a few juices that you can pick from as well, some fruits. Is the food in Kenya totally different than what we see here?
Not really. Well, it's fresher, I would say. Like, you get fresh vegetables, you get fresh fruits. You go to the market and the quality of the food, I would say, would be different, because here you buy a lot of stuff that is frozen. But apart from that, I would say for a Kenyan, what you eat at home, you can actually get it very easily in Germany. We eat a lot of rice, we eat vegetables, peas, carrots, cabbage. That's the kind of thing we eat. And we are influenced a lot by the expatriates, you know. There's a big expatriate population. So a lot of the food that's eaten in Europe has already been exported to Kenya and it's being sold in Kenya.
Okay. So where do you come from exactly in Kenya? Tell us a little bit more about your hometown and how can we picture your everyday life in Kenya?
Well, where I come from is a village close to the Uganda border. That's where my parents originally come from. It's like one hour's drive from the Ugandan border. That's in the western part of Kenya. It's called Kimilili.
Kimilili?
Yeah.
That's a nice name.
That's where my parents were born, both of them, my dad and my mom. Their families were kind of neighbors, yeah. But then my father moved eventually because of work, moved to the capital city, Nairobi. And my mom followed later. So I would say we've grown up mostly in Nairobi. And right now my father still works in Nairobi. My mom is back in Kimilili. She's a farmer. So our lives are sort of been split between Kimilili, which is like the village where most of our relatives are, and the capital city, because that's where my parents are working and that's where we were living.
And how far away is that from each other?
It's like 350 kilometers.
Okay.
Yeah. So a day's journey by bus. And then where I've been living is, I've lived in different places. We are driven by work, basically. You have the place where you come from, where your family comes from, but then most people don't live there unless, if they're employed, they always live in the cities where their job is. So like I've moved around in Kenya in different towns where I had work, and then I would go back home just to visit. Yeah.
So that's a normal thing. I think that's a development that we see in Germany as well. More and more people are starting to work at a place that they don't come from, so they have to commute, which I think is very hard for families, because you know, you don't see each other that often anymore, and it's draining, the commute, whether you do it on a daily basis or on a weekly basis.
For us, it wasn't like that actually. It's like just the way things are. We didn't notice it as such. We were happy when, like, because the first few years of our lives, say when I started school, up to the time maybe I was 7, my father was away. We were living with my mom because at that time she was still working in Kimilili, yeah. And we just knew it like that. My dad was working in the city and he would come over the weekend and he would be bringing something nice. So we didn't feel like we were separated. He's not there, but he's part of the family, and you just have that sense that you don't really feel like you're missing anything.
So But they always just worked in Kenya, or did they also go to Europe every once in a while? Is it normal to go to different continents, or do you usually stay?
I think it depends on the job.
Country?
Like my father is an architect, so he worked for the government. He worked in the Ministry of Works, and because of his job, he got to travel a lot. So there are some times that he came to Europe. They did tours of Europe, maybe, or Asia. So he traveled a lot. And
did you ever travel with him?
No,
okay.
Because it was really just a government.
Yeah.
You know, they pay for the government representative and not his family.
Yeah. Was it exciting? Was it scary? How did you encounter this?
It was exciting because, well, you know, you go to a place for the first time.
Yeah.
And you've always heard about this when you're doing German classes, and they're always talking about Germany and Berlin and.
Okay,
you know,
so you learned that you already learned German.
Yeah, I learned German in Kenya.
Okay.
Yeah, and so and we even had like a preparation about the culture shock that we were going to experience in Berlin. Oh, you shouldn't go to these places. You shouldn't see this. You shouldn't eat this. You know, like how to survive. And
how to survive in Germany.
Survive in Germany, kind of. Yeah. Our lecturer was, at that time, she was a bit worried. I think she also had this feeling that Africa and Europe are so different. And this is common. It's like, I've seen that a lot. People think that we are so different, and so they over-prepare you for something that, like, they think you're probably going to get so shocked. But it wasn't like that, because we watch TV and we have an idea, you know, we've interacted with people, so we have an idea what we are going to get. It's just the excitement that you're actually going to be in a different place and you're going to be doing different things. And so it's not the things that people expect you to get shocked about that shock you. Like, we just sort of blended in.
That's interesting. I remember when I was 16, I went to the US for 1 year. And we also had a preparation week where they would talk about the culture shock. And then first you had the honeymoon phase where everything is very exciting. And then you would get into, I guess, a depression mode where you start missing home and everything. But I have to say, even though you might think that the US and Germany are quite similar, I still had a culture shock. So it's interesting, you know, to hear that you say, coming from Africa, going to Europe, there are still a lot of similarities. So now you just said it, you're here for 2 years for studying.
Yeah.
And I wonder, how do you think the German media is showing the African culture, African also politics, economics? How do you think it's being covered? Is it covered the correct way, or would you do it differently? Because you just said
interesting, you should ask that, because it's what me and some friends of mine have been discussing, and we got to a point where, you know what, we are just tired of complaining about it, because it's like
okay.
It's like people
we'll do it one more time.
What do you think? How do you think Africa is being covered?
Yeah.
And then of course you start this whole mode of, we don't like it, it's negative, it's like the focus on the negative aspects, you know. Then sometimes I wonder if that's not just the way news is. That, you know, if you're not telling your own story,
way,
you're letting other people come, they have 5 minutes to tell your story, they will look for what will sell.
Scandal.
They look for scandal. And it's like the whole system is structured like that. It's like, if I work in a village, and in that village, 80% of the children are in school. That is not news. The news will be 20% are not in school. That is how the system is. It's not just the news. It's also like, if you look at the way the development sector works, it's the same thing. They always look at the part that has not been done. Yeah. So, that's how it is. And I think the only way is for us to change that, to tell our own stories and say, okay, it's not as bad as you're portraying it.
So the good and the bad. Have you seen the good and the bad in Germany or in Europe in general?
Yeah.
What would you say is good and what would you say is bad?
I would say, well, things work. The thing I like about Germany is there's a certain order to things that you know what to expect, and you know, like, you know, if I need to get a certain thing, there are some steps I have to follow, and if I follow those steps, then I'm going to get what I need within the time that I need to get it. That happens a lot. Like, I wouldn't say I've had really like administrative difficulties here, yeah. But then at the same time, it's like there's this thing when you're in Kenya, like me when I was in Kenya, this hyped up thing about freedom of opinion and freedom of speech, but there's a certain way that I think people here censor themselves. And maybe it's the way it's like you're a democracy, you have certain principles that you're supposed to live by. And I get a sense that as a community, people are conditioned to speak in a certain way and to think in a certain way. And so if there's a dissenting voice, it's sort of like not heard because it's just not, it doesn't fit within what is supposed to be a democracy.
Are you going back to Kenya, or do you still want to stay here for a little bit longer, maybe even want to stay here forever? What are your plans?
My plans are to go back, I wouldn't say necessarily to Kenya, but I want to go back to Africa. Yeah, I think I've lived and worked in Kenya since I started working now almost, well, coming to almost 10 years actually, maybe 7, 8 years I've been working in Kenya. And I want to expand my horizon a little bit, but I don't want to stay in Europe. I just feel it makes more sense for me to go back to Africa. I think it's a more interesting place to work for me. And
why?
Because I've been working in the development sector, yeah. So I'm interested in, say, education issues, environment issues, yeah. And it's just a more interesting environment to work in Africa because there's a lot more to do there. I understand, I mean, Kenya and other African countries, of course, they're different. Culturally, you will see that they're quite different.
It sounds like you're very courageous in the sense that you don't know necessarily 100% what you're going to do, but you know you're going to move, and it seems like you have a lot of possibilities. Do you feel any limits? Anything that you would not be able to do? Or
money limits me because I have to make a living. Yeah, so I can't say that I'm going to be surviving just on air
love.
Or on support, on love. There's nothing like that. I have to make money. Yeah, and I know I have a supportive family, so right now I'm going to go back home, of course, to be planning the next move. And they'll have to support me, they'll have to feed me, they'll have to pay the rent.
What is your biggest hope in the near future? Yes.
My biggest hope is that I do something I really like doing, that I can actually have my own input, like I can direct and say, okay, I want to do things this way and not this way. To live in a place I want to live, where the sun shines every day.
Just stay in Germany, it's beautiful here.
Well, Germany is actually beautiful. I'm not saying that Germany is
just not weather-wise.
Weather-wise,
it's been a disappointment.
Europe in the summer, I must say. If someone was to tell me to come to Europe and choose the time, that I would pick just the time that the sun shines, because I really enjoy it. You know, I want to do something that makes a change. You know, not this business as usual things. It's like we just need to change the way things are done. Yeah, and the only way, like say, if you look at the whole of Africa, or most parts of Africa, we always have the same issues. And I guess even when we are complaining that the media reports it the same way, it's probably because they're the same issues. But we have systems in place that are making these things just remain the same. So we have, if you talk about governments that are not doing much to change the way, like people who are taking too much out of communities and investing too little, or paying the communities too little, because I mean, we can't say we don't have resources. We have resources, so we just need to change the way we are using those resources. Then, so that exploitation is over, and then you get the next one, development aid, where we are crying about the people who don't have because it's been taken away from them, but then we are not putting enough to change anything anyway. So we are creating jobs in the development sector, but not changing much with it. So it's the same rhetoric year in, year out. And I think right now there are many people who are thinking, what is it that we need to do different ourselves? And really for me, if I could get a chance to just contribute in such initiatives where people are thinking about coming up with their own solutions and using the resources that they have, and then make a change that, you know, it's coming from the communities themselves. You know, just without having necessarily to rely on external aid, and because the resources are right there. So I'm hoping that I can get these kinds of initiatives because I think it will be exciting.
So now, looking back at the almost 2 years now, do you think it was good to get outside of the country to sort of see the whole situation from a distance, or do you think it would have been better to maybe stay in Kenya and, you know, work on these issues right away?
I think I needed the distance. I needed the distance. I needed the break, just the time away from, because as I told you, I'm really from the development aid kind of, you know, and I think I just also needed the break to step out of this box and look at everything and ask myself, okay, where exactly in this whole constellation do I want to position myself? Yeah, because when you're stuck in the rat race, you're just walking, and the treadmill keeps going, But then you step out and you're able to figure out where you want to get in, or even if you go back to the same place, but you're going back with a different kind of perspective to it. So I think definitely it was a good thing to just...
So change was needed, and
So, and I think being away, I've been able to sort of gain new perspectives, figure out that I can do things in a different way. So now it's just to look now. I think the next few months I'm going to be looking for that opportunity to actually do things now in that different way.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because in our last interview we were talking about transition phases and how people cope with these transition phases, and I think you're in exactly the same spot. You're in between two different worlds right now because you still are studying, but who knows what's going to happen next. What's your biggest scare? What are you afraid of? Is there anything that you're afraid of? It seems like you're not, but it seems like you're fearless.
See, no, it's not that I'm fearless. I think usually it's just the way you wake up sometimes in the middle of the night and you're like,
what's going to happen next?
What's going to happen next? What am I exactly going to be doing? Well, it's not really fear. I'm not afraid. And the reason I'm not afraid is because I think I know that I have people behind me. I think that's why I work with confidence. I'm like, my family is there. They'll look at me and, you know, they'll be like, you'll figure it out, you know. So even right now, sometimes I will talk to my younger sister. She also took a break from work, came to study actually for a year to Germany. And she told me, like, I was talking to her, I was like, oh my goodness. So now the study period is over. I need to become grown up again and show people that I'm working for a living. And she was like, you don't even have to worry about it, because usually people think that the fear you have is that everyone else is moving ahead and you're sort of stuck. You know, you stopped, and the people, your peers basically, have moved on professionally, they've moved on, they've invested, they've, you know, like they're settling down, sort of, And she was like, you know what, the issues are always the same. You'll realize, you'll step, it's really a rat race. You come back and life just sort of picks up, and it's the same, it's as if you never left, you know. So it's a fear that we create within ourselves, but shouldn't really. It's a good thing to actually just stop first and go like, okay, I'm lucky I've had this break. Now let's see what comes. And then we shouldn't look at it like it's
sounds
something to be afraid of. It's something to actually just be like,
So if there was one advice that you'd have to give to people who are in that transition phase and who are, or maybe not even in that transition phase yet, but who are scared to move on to the next step, what would that be?
I think maybe it's the same thing that my sister was telling me. It's you just make the leap of faith. You know, you just follow you follow what your instinct is telling you.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there's something that you're thinking you should do, and then you're convincing yourself that you shouldn't do it because of ABCD, already the instinct you're having, it's like you want to try something. That is what you should be listening to. It's you're seeing that opportunity and you're considering it because something inside you tells you it's time for you to do something different. So sometimes it's just like, don't think about what's going to come. Do what you feel you have to do now. And then by the time that you're maybe halfway through doing what you felt you needed to do, you'll be figuring out the next step. And that next step might not even have any relation to the fears that you had. You probably have a few new fears, but then it's again, you just make the same, like, what do you need to do now? And then you just do that.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for this interview. I really enjoyed it, listening to where you come from, but also what you're up to next. It sounds like exciting times. So that was our latest episode, talking to real people with real stories, and we're looking forward to our next interview, and hopefully we'll see you again then. Goodbye. Thank you. That was fun.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Clearly, I still don't know where I'm going to end up.